Welcome to another episode of the Limitless Life Podcast. I am your host, Kyle Smith. And if you have not done so, hit that subscribe button so that you never miss another podcast. And if you love this podcast and want some more tips and tricks on how to improve yourself, go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel. There are a ton of instructional videos there. You can find the links below. However, for today, this beautiful day, my guest is Omid, Qashus, Qaderi. Born and raised in Edmonton, Alberta, the independent talent Qashus, better known as Qashus, so Omid Qaderi, better known as Qashus, is a hip-hop artist with an ear for music and a passion for his work. Qashus, a rapper, songwriter, filmmaker, entrepreneur, fell in love with rap when he attended J. Cole's concert in 2009, immediately finding deep inspiration to create music. For him, he recognized the deep meaning beyond rhythms and rhymes of rap. He takes influence from talents of hip-hop legends like Gang Starr, DJ Premier, Nas, Tupac, Dr. Dre, 50 Cent, and artists of today's generation, J. Cole, Logic, and Russ. He developed a connection with old school boom bap, their anecdotal approaches to his music as he seen done before by the greats. His resilient Afghan-Canadian identity is what motivates the more personal messages of his rap and defines who he is as an individual and as an artist. Outside of the studio, Qashus is the radio host of the Full Switch program on the Universal Radio Network and host of the Second Floor podcast. He is also the founder of the media production company Q Films Media. In 2019, he directed, shot, and edited 2 Super Bowl commercials for the Canadian Brewhouse, which aired on the Canadian television network. My man, Qashus, the legend. Welcome to the show.
Yo, man, I appreciate you. I'm surprised you went through the entire thing because nobody usually goes through my entire bio, but I appreciate you, man. Thank you.
You know what? There's no sense in like just going half measures, you know? Why not just go full bore?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you, man. Thank you for having me on. I'm honored to be here and I'm honored to chop it up with you, man. I can't wait for our conversation. So
yeah, absolutely. So really, really simple. How is it that what you do impacts others?
Impacts others. Well, I hope that the art that I create through music and film and the people that I work with on a day-to-day, I hope they, take some inspiration from it. I'm full creative, right? So I'm in the media space. We're doing podcasting, we're doing radio, we're doing film, we're doing videography, photography, we're doing all sorts of creative stuff. So it's almost like a blank canvas when I work with people or when I am working on my own personal projects, whether it's music or film. And so I think the things that I produce, I'm hoping to get a feeling out of people. So I feel like that is how I impact people in the world, is when they watch a video of mine or they listen to a song of mine or I create a video for somebody, I am trying to get a feeling out of them. And whether it's for my own business, where it's videography, I try to produce that feeling of what they want out of that video. Whether it's my own personal projects with music and film, I am trying to get a feeling out of the person across from me. If they're listening to it, if they're watching it, same with the podcast. So I think that's how my work impacts others around me. So
that's beautiful. So I think that creativity is an expression of the person that we are in this moment. And there is a component of vulnerability in whatever we're trying to create, especially if it invokes an emotion. How do you find that you bring a lot more vulnerability to your projects and to your art?
Yeah, 100%, man. I think if you're not vulnerable, it's you're putting up some sort of no, I wouldn't say facade, but I feel like that's one half of you that isn't showcased, right? So especially in rap, I know I think one of the individuals who's found the most success in this is Drake. Him putting himself out into the world with his music, where he comes off as quote unquote soft. That was his criticism early on, where he's not really a rapper, he's a singer. Why is he trying to get into rap? Why is he trying to act all, bravado or gangster or whatever you want to call it? But his strength is being vulnerable, talking about his background, talking about his struggles with women, talking about his struggles with his Jewish background. And for me, from my music and my filmmaking, I've tried to implement that in the videos that I do. Not in everything, not in every form of piece of work that I do, but I always keep that in the back of my head. I'm Afghan, I'm Canadian. I want to bring that to the table. I want to share those stories from my father and share the stories that I've, when I was in Afghanistan for a month, and bring that to the table and be vulnerable and share those actual honest experiences, because I feel like that's where the best art is created, is being fully, or trying to express yourself in the fullest form, and that includes being vulnerable.
I love that. So where do you find the most inspiration for your creativity? What kind of activities do you find yourself where I'll put it this way, where the universe is just dumping creativity in your brain and then you got to spew it out? What kind of activities kind of get you dialed in that way?
Well, I don't really, I guess, quote unquote, seek that sort of inspiration. I kind of just put myself in the environments. So I think for me, being in my studio and listening to a certain melody or a certain rhythm or a certain beat or instrumental, that puts me in a certain vibe, right? And I think, a lot of people who are artists, I think everyone has a different way of creating, creative works and whatnot. But for me, I'll put myself in my studio and I'll run through my inspirations. So I'll listen to a J. Cole song, or I'll listen to some sort of old school hip hop instrumental. I'll listen to some R&B, or I'll listen to some jazz, stuff that I love. And then within that moment where I'm trying to gain, like, I will feel, I'll gravitate toward a certain instrumental, or I'll gravitate towards something during that session. And then I'll start to write to it, or then I'll start to, think about what I could produce from that session. Some sessions are great, I'll write, an entire song. And then some sessions are, I can't think of a line. I can't think of anything. And so I try to not put too much of a, I guess, quote unquote, sandbox, if you will. I try to let myself kind of free flow while I'm in my sessions. So
That's pretty sweet. I heard Jack White say in an interview once where when he hears a song of his, when he's just out and about, he doesn't even recognize it as him writing it. And it's as if what we were kind of talking about before, where creativity flows through people, where it is his lyrics, it is his song. But when he's in the moment, when he's like just in the moment writing the song, there's something else going through him. Do you find your music to be similar, where it's something that you wrote, but you don't see it as, you see it as something further past like just yourself?
I agree. 100% I agree, because it's in that moment, that specific moment, and that feeling that is captured within that time frame, right? You're creating something at a specific time frame, at a specific moment. You're in a specific environment, you're in a specific feeling. And yeah, so for example, like I made a song a few years back, and it's, it was a collaboration with a friend, and it was very, very hard and very grimy and very like dark. And I look back at that song, and sometimes I'll listen to it, and I almost cringe sometimes, because I'm like, oh, like, that was such a different feeling and different moment for me, that I don't even, not that I cringe in saying it's bad. I'm just saying it from the standpoint of, I'm not in that feeling anymore. I'm not in that moment. And so I just see it as like, oh, that was a really good song for that particular time, because I was going through XYZ. And so I put it out there, and I put myself out there in that sense. But when I look back at it, I just see it as that thing, as its own specific entity that's out in the world, and it was for a specific time. So
do you find that in the process of writing, because you were talking about at that time, you look back at that, or you listen to that song, you're like, shit. And then you're thinking of it now, how you're a different person. Do you find that writing music and creating music to be therapeutic?
Oh yeah, 100%, man. It is, because as human beings, as individuals, we go through life, especially in, I would say, in this kind of society and kind of Western world, where we're taught to be like this kind of like lone wolf hustler, like, you gotta, you work your 9 to 5 and work your 5 to 9, and have a great family, and have everything has to be at like, I gotta keep going and keep pursuing all these enormous mountains. And I feel like for me, that it's one of those things that has, sorry, I lost my train of thought, but
All good.
it's one of those things that I think is kind of a hindrance, in a sense, where you feel like you have to keep pursuing, these mountains, and go after these big things, and have these expectations, which I I think there's definitely a certain point where you have to decide what mountain is right for you, I would say. And it can't be, you can't be pursuing everything, and you can't be splitting your time into multiple things, and you can't let yourself down and have these enormous expectations of trying to be great at everything. Personally, that's just how I feel. So
I completely agree with that. There is a saying for that, is if you try to catch two rabbits, you're going to catch neither.
yeah, exactly. I totally agree with that, man. Totally agree. What about you? I'm curious. Where do you find your inspiration? How do you for the things that you do, whether it's on the side or whether it's full time, where do you find that inspiration? How
My
do you gain? Yeah.
my inspiration, or where I find the most inspiration, is uh definitely from listening to like people I look up to. Um and I find walking. I always go for walks and I find the inspiration that way as well. But usually I start with challenging a thought. So if a thought pops up, then I try to challenge it. I try to try to counter my thought. I like to um, challenge it and then just see where that conversation goes.
I
Because
like that.
I find before, when I would just listen to more voices or more input externally, so kind of like, oh, which everyone's trying to pursue those different mountains, so we don't ever get to listen to our own thoughts. But when we listen to our own thoughts, oftentimes we have an inner wisdom that just already knows the resolution to whatever we're experiencing. So I think I've made it a practice to just try to listen to that thought process, or try to challenge that thought process or a narrative that may have been implanted, or it could be habitual, and try to line it up with how things how I kind of see the trajectory. The main
Yeah.
Now that I'm actually saying it out loud, the main thing where I draw a lot of inspiration from is I'm trying to answer the question of what is the truest truth. And to find the truest truth, I've been able to learn a lot from a lot of different things, but I've learned it from an objective point of view. So I don't that involves it is the exercise of, or the exorcism of other people's narratives, societal narratives, expectations, just trying to flush it out. Because for me to be able to accomplish this creative mission of finding the truest truth, my biases can't get in the way. So I find that when I am able to think of what this truest truth is, I try to find common denominators where things overlap. And it's just similar to, if you look at theology and philosophy, both of them have the same premise: don't be a piece of shit human being.
Yeah.
Right. And so people are just they try to fight or counter something only based off of their personal experience or their opinion of it, or if it challenges their identity. So it's kind of interesting, because I was saying it to a buddy of mine earlier today, where I'm walking through this world where it's my consciousness that's just tethered to the body, and it's just kind of playing around. It's just trying
Mm,
to explore, it's trying to learn. So I
yeah.
think my creativity comes from trying to think and understand, like, how everything is kind of created, or a common denominator that connects us all. Like, for example, the only thing between yourself and myself is our consciousness, because we're still birthed from the same point in time. No matter what someone believes, in order for things to be, they have to be created. Otherwise, they just don't exist. So at some point in time, no matter what the beliefs are, there was the Big Bang, whatever someone wants to think of, and then it got to this point. Our physiology is at the same point in time. It just adapted to our surroundings over time, but our consciousness is for certain different.
Right.
So it's just like, I like thinking like really esoterically, philosophically, and it just encourages creative questioning, I suppose.
I love that, man. And I think what you touched on too is where you kind of take these, take these inputs and whatnot, and just kind of, have your own perspective, or at least you're open to the sense of, challenging yourself and playing devil's advocate, which I think is huge, especially in this day and age, because people are soft. People are not like, if I say something and I believe something, and you're the complete opposite, now you're offended. And why should you be offended by that? Why should you be offended by my belief system? And why should I be offended by your belief system? Why can't we have a discussion here? And why can't we have a civil discussion? You know what I'm saying? Like, why are we, canceling people? Why are we trying to, like, oh, you believe this, and, like, cancel this guy and go all this way to tarnish this person's name? And I just find that, like, guys like, Patrick Bet-David, who's someone that I look up to, who's an entrepreneur, and he has very strong beliefs, and not all the beliefs that I don't agree with everything he says. Or a guy like Joe Rogan, I'm sure you don't agree with everything the guy says, but can you sit with someone who has the opposing beliefs across from you and have a civil discussion? And that's why I admire Patrick, because he brings on people that challenge capitalism, and they challenge kind of his beliefs, and he'll actually, and you can see sometimes, like, the conversations get heated, and the other person is starting to get angry and whatnot, but he's sitting there very calm, and he's like, listen, I'm just asking you a question. Like, this is just meant to bring out the best of both of us, so that the audience can listen to it and take both perspectives. And that's something that I try to, I'm kind of like you, is like, I'll challenge myself and my beliefs. If you tell me I'm wrong for whatever reason, okay, I want to know. Like, tell me, give me something that I don't know. And I think that's very important in this day and age. So
I agree. I think for this is obviously my opinion on this one, but I think that there is more of an emphasis on teaching people what to think rather than how to think. So then people are really tied up with the absolutes of things rather than the constructive, how to create a collaboration to progress as a bigger whole. But I also think that a reframe, or something that's really important, is to go from the foundation of thinking in terms of me into terms of we. So how can we learn from each other? It's like, no, I'm right and you have to be wrong, because if you challenge me on my ideas, then that affects my identity. And people,
yes.
well, we're lazy. We don't want to actually put in the mental effort and work in order to change our thoughts about ourselves. And that's the hardest mind to change, is our own.
100%.
Because we're just
100%,
working on
man.
reaction. We're not working on response. But I think, yeah, I totally agree. Where it's important to actually have that civil, like, discussion in order to be able to have a conversation. I actually also think that it's easier to get angry and loud than it is for people to defend their position.
Yep.
And I do think that a majority of people that resort straight to anger or frustration, or they want to counter and lash out in reaction, just have not thought about the topic at hand deep enough. They have shallow thinking, not deep thinking. And so that is what's going to create chaos, because it's easier to just get pissed off at someone for challenging them than it is to say, huh, I never thought of that.
Yeah, 100%. It's tough. It's tough to swallow. It's tough to swallow your own pride sometimes, and maybe admit you're wrong, or maybe admit that there is a different perspective or a different idea behind whatever it is that you're kind of defending, right? And that's one of those things that's hard to do, because like you said, it's attached to your identity, and someone feels like someone's attacking your identity. Well, you're not just going to sit there and just take it, so. But
what is an identity shift that you had, or what is a part of your identity that you had to challenge in order to become the person that you are now?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. I had to challenge the idea that I thought I was going to be saved by my family and my cousins and the people that were supporting me. Especially coming from a brown sort of background, and an immigrant background, your parents and your family play a very important role in your life, and they try to create your future almost for you. And so the hard part of that is when you're growing up, and especially when I was growing up, I had these inclinations of being creative. I had these inclinations of dreaming about being in film and acting and doing all the stuff that I'm doing today, that's manifested out in the world today, where the position I'm in today was I had to challenge the inner thought that I am supposed to stay in this lane of doing whatever I'm told from my parents. And so going to school, going to work, you should be doing this, Omid, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. Why are you rapping? Why are you coming home and editing videos? Like, what are you up to? And this is back in 2005, 2006, where, YouTube and stuff was maybe just starting to come up in the realms and this kind of online space of video creation and whatnot. And I was doing those things. I was like vlogging when I was 14. It's funny, I have those video clips of just me walking around with a camera talking about my day. Like, and this was before the Casey Neistat. This is before like all these YouTubers were popping up. And I had these inclinations of doing those things. And my parents thought I was weird. I have one of my most recent songs called The Black Sheep. It's talking about my dad's kind of point of view and my point of view. And I felt like the black sheep. I felt like an outlier at home because I couldn't be creative. Being creative in a conservative family does not go well. It does not. You look like a weirdo. So, and I always put that identity, and I pushed that identity down. I pushed those ideas and I suppressed those ideas because I thought they were wrong. I thought rapping and making music was wrong because of my upbringing. I thought making videos and film and thinking about one day being a film director or having my own sort of, production company or doing these sorts of things, I thought that was wrong because of my upbringing. And so I started to have this chip on my shoulder of trying to hide my creative works and just do them on the side or evenings and weekends and not show my parents or family because they would think I'm a weirdo. So, but it took a long time. And I constantly, it's not even like a challenge. It was more so just an inclination. It just kept coming up. Like, when you have something in the back of your mind that you've always wanted to do, and you push it in the back of your head, you're like, I'm going to do it. But, you just push it back. You keep pushing it back. But one day, 5 years, 10 years down the road, it's going to come back and bite you. And that's where people have like a midlife crisis. Like, man, I didn't take the risk to open my own business. I didn't take that moment where I had that idea. And we talked about this before off air, where it's like that idea comes and then you throw in the back and you just say, no, I'm not. But that's the right path. You just are deciding not to act on it. So.
Absolutely. I got a neat question for your upbringing as well, because you said, so you're a creative that had a conservative family that probably wanted you to do some sort of, what was the jobs that your parents wanted you to take part in? I wanted to classic, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I was gonna say just like a classic med school, like go to be a doctor, optometrist, anything, doctor, lawyer, engineer. That was the idea. And I got my biology degree. That's the thing. I went to school, I went to the U of A, and I got my 4-year degree. But during my degree, that's where I was being the most creative, man. Like I was the most hungry. Like I was doing YouTube, and I was, experimenting with cameras, and I had no money and no resources, but I was pushing it. And that sort of deep, sort of those ideas, luckily at that time, although I think I tried to, I think I tried to accept what my parents were saying and say, look, okay, I'm gonna get my degree. So I've taken care of what you want from me. So then I felt better and I felt confident to execute on the creative stuff, because I was like, oh, I'm still getting my degree. It's not like I'm not. And so I didn't really have the confidence to go out on my own and say no early on after high school. But I was so lucky to just be stupid and just execute and just say, you know what, I'm going to try to create a TV show. I'm just going to try to create a TV show. And I tried. It was called The Hero's Journey, and it actually never came to fruition. But the act of me meeting with other filmmakers and actors and trying to bring them together, and writers and whatnot, that got me to fail hard. And I was like, oh, okay, it's not as easy as I thought it was going to be. And just my ignorance, and when they say ignorance is bliss, right? Like I was just ignorant to the fact of, but I was executing and I was failing and I was constantly trying. I'm like, man, wouldn't it be so cool to be able to make music like J. Cole one day? Wouldn't it be so cool to make my own videos one day? And I don't know how to do this. I don't know where to start. I got no money. I got no resource. I got no name. I got no connections. How do I even start? All right, just try, reach out to people, do something, at least the act of trying and doing. And so, yeah.
There's a couple of takeaways I wanted to put in there that I think is really, really cool. Because it came up with it as a visual when you were talking about it, but when you were in university, you were saying, so you said when you were in university, that's when you were the hungriest for that creativity. You were starving for creativity.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then during that time, you didn't have the how, but you focused on the why. The why was very important, and then the how was going to figure it out. And I think that an admirable quality and trait in that is the persistence for progress towards the why, rather than allowing the how to bog you down. And I 100%. Think you working through that is something that I think is absolutely phenomenal, because I find, and I've been guilty of this in my past, where I would try it once and then it didn't work out. And then suddenly it's obviously not going to try for anything else ever again, because, that's reality, obviously. One and done.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. So
it's, yeah.
Go for it if you're going to say something there.
Yeah, no, I just, for me, it was, I never felt aligned inside. My heart and my head never felt aligned. And what I mean by that is, when you work a job that you hate, you don't want to be there. You're looking at the clock, you feel pissed off inside, in your heart, you're not supposed to be there. You work at, these kind of menial jobs and stuff that, that, okay, I'm not going to be here forever, but I feel like I have to be here. And I have to wake up at 6 a.m. to be at this job that I don't like, and put on the suit or put on the vest and talk to customers and wipe the tables, clean the counters, whatever that is. You're ignoring your heart when you're there. You're thinking about it logically, and you're saying, okay, I have to be here to create, to make money, to support myself, which is fair. But in your heart, you're not aligned. So your heart and your mind aren't aligned by being there. And so there's this constant ache inside saying, you shouldn't, why are you here? What are you doing? You're forcing yourself. You're suppressing that emotional, feeling from your heart, saying you shouldn't be here. You should be going and doing something else and pursuing what you really want to do, which is music. What you really want to do, which is film. What you really want to do is be an artist or painter, whatever that is. And so I've worked every single job. Like I've worked since I was 13, and I've worked at the Walmarts, the superstores, these big box retailers, and I've worked as a dishwasher. I've done all these things, and every single job that I've had, it's never aligned with my heart. And so that feeling it always kept coming up. Like, man, I don't belong here, and I don't feel, this doesn't feel right. And so that feeling kept getting stronger, where it was like, okay, I know the jobs that I don't like and the things that I don't want to pursue. But if I sit here and do nothing, I'm gonna feel even more like shit. If I'm working these 9 to 5s that I don't like, I'm gonna feel more like shit. And so that's where it's like, if even if I don't know what I'm doing, if I'm sitting and doing nothing, that hurts even more. So I have to do something. I have to send an email. I have to phone call somebody. I have to go meet somebody in the film industry or in the music industry. I have to do something so that my heart and my mind feel aligned, that, oh yeah, I'm still pushing to the right path, even though I'm working these jobs that I need to support myself. And so that I continuously did that, to a point where I started to gain a little bit of momentum. You get these small wins. You start to understand, oh, this is how you create a video. Oh, this is what you do on YouTube that works. Oh, this is what you shouldn't be doing. And then as you slowly start to continue to push that way, you gain more confidence, and you start to, hopefully start to align your heart and your mind. So
I love that. At least if you're trying things out, you have a higher probability of finding the thing.
yeah,
Yeah, I
exactly.
like that. So, what is it that sets your heart on fire?
In a good way or a bad way?
Ooh, yeah, fair enough. Well, I guess since we're talking more on the positive part, let's go negative. No, just joking. Let's go
Yeah,
positive.
okay.
Yeah. So where does what gets you excited? What gets you pumped up? Where is it that source of creativity could come from, where you just feel like you were just dialed in, where it's just like, yes, oh, like
Yeah,
I don't even know how to describe it, to be
I know
honest.
what you mean, man. Yeah, I think it's making music. I think the music and the visual. I think it's always the ideas that are my own, or in the sense of from my own consciousness and the things that I'm thinking about. So, for example, creating a song from scratch, or quote unquote scratch, that to me, getting to that final piece of like, I'm listening back to it, that that shit sets my heart on fire, man. Where I'm just like, oh my god, I created this, or like, um, I don't know if you like. I would encourage anybody to go into the studio with, if they have a music friend, like somebody who's an artist or whatnot, because when you're at a when you're making a song and it's nothing at the beginning, and then when you're in the studio and you start creating it, and the layers start to piece together, and then you get to this quote unquote final product, and you listen back to it, that rush of feeling emotion is priceless, man. Like, in that moment where you're like, I just created this and it sounds incredible to myself, um that is a feeling that I constantly chase. And I'm so excited to, be like, all right, I got to make some marketing material around it. I gotta make a music video, or I gotta make some content around it. That's really where my heart goes on fire. So
I like that. That's
yeah.
good.
What about
And
you?
I was just pondering it for podcasting, something that I have learned is that I really enjoy it because I like learning. I like to, this is actually just for me to selfishly learn from people. It's cool. It's fun.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Uh, and okay, so for what I'll talk about the creative act part. So when I'm chatting, whenever and I said this is Kendra literally yesterday, whenever I ask a question, like how you were like, that's a good question. That to me is what you're describing. Like that
Mm,
feeling where you listen back on something. Cause I know later on when I go through this again, cause I listen to it again so I can come up with the title of the podcast, unless I come with it up of it on the fly. But when I listen back on the podcast, there's been times where I asked a question. I'm like, I don't even recall like really asking that question. And I was just so dialed in, or some question just pops up. And it's actually, I have another one of these kind of questions that just kind of popped into my brain from the universe, I suppose, or the source, as Rick Rubin calls it, that I told you about pre-show. But from I think where I draw creativity from, or what sets my heart on fire, is existence, like just the act of being and the act of just like engaging with the world, like consciously living rather than mindlessly just going through the motions. And I find, because I have a rule for myself. Anything that's outside of a 5-foot radius, more often than not, is not something to pay attention to. The most important things are in my vicinity, that are
Right.
immediate, that I have the most control of. And so with that kind of thought process, or with that frame of mind, I found that it brings me much more to the present. And when I'm in the present, there's less mental resistance. So I'm just having a better flow of consciousness, a better flow of thoughts. And it makes it easier for me to counter different thoughts as I go through them. So it's just I guess, doing my best to actively be present as often as I can is where I get the best kind of flow, I suppose. Yeah.
I love that, man. I love
Yeah.
that.
And it's
Yeah.
cool because I can't think, like, I could think about tomorrow, but tomorrow doesn't exist. I could think about yesterday, but yesterday doesn't exist. Like right now in the present is the only time that we have any control of anything. And I really like, I kind of get the quote right, but I kind of get it wrong, but it's from Kung Fu Panda, Master Uwe.
Mm.
He says that depression is living in the past and anxiety is living in the future, and today is a gift. That's why it's known as the present.
I love that.
And I think that that's keeping that kind of in mind. And there's a whole bunch of philosophical and like theological, like presence is a practice. And so when I found myself the most anxious or the most depressed, it's because I just wasn't present. We cannot be present and in the future or the past at the same time.
Yeah,
But we always
100%,
think
man.
in either direction instead. And that's I think it's a risky place to be, because the only place that we actually are is within this time, within this moment. And
100%.
it's
Yeah.
it's just craziness on that one, dude.
No, I like that. It's true, man. It's true. I just, yeah, I would, yeah, going back to your question, like that is, I think where I even just lose the sense of just time and everything is in the studio and just being there. And I love that. And I want to continuously put myself in those positions because that's where your heart and your head align, right? When you're not thinking about work, when you're not, you're in the right job or career when you are not looking at the clock and you're like, oh my God, it's 4 o'clock already. It's 5 o'clock already. Oh man, I feel like I didn't get anything done yet. You know what I mean? And that's where I for me and kind of the goal of some of the podcasts that we have is trying to bring out these ideas for our audience and saying, look, like you can, I guess I've never put it that way with the head and the heart, but like you want to get that aligned in whatever that is, whether that's your career, personal life, relationships. You don't want to be thinking about time. You don't want to be thinking about the past or the future, right? You just want to be thinking about this moment because like you said, it's the present. And if you're loving the present, you're not thinking about the past or the future. So
Damn. I know I was saying earlier where it's like, shit, I like to try the end of the podcast on a freaking fired like knowledge bomb, but it's
yeah.
too early to end it. So you're just gonna have to provide another one later on that's just gonna be even
Yeah.
better than that one, because that was so good.
I appreciate you,
That
man.
is so
Thank
good.
you.
So I got a pretty neat question. So you have a very conservative family, right? And then you have a creative perspective. You have a creative let me see, calling. There we go. You have a creative calling, while you have a conservative family that wants you to take a route that is just the most consistent, I suppose.
Right.
So there's not, I wouldn't say that there's like, do you think there's often where there's like a butting head kind of thing?
Yeah, in certain scenarios, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So who is the most resistant to your creative journey?
I would say my father was. When I say was, that was because it was at a certain time. And I don't blame him because of his background and him coming from Afghanistan and during the war, escaping the war there, and coming here into Canada. You know, not knowing the language, having just his shirt, as he says, he had one shirt and one pair of pants. He came to Canada and he's built a life for himself and his family and whatnot, and not knowing the language, et cetera, et cetera. So, in his mind, going to school is your way to become successful. And getting these quote unquote prestigious jobs or careers is where you will find the most happiness, the most success, the most fulfilling life. And so that was ingrained in him. And my dad was an engineer back in Afghanistan. And so for him, and he has a military background. So, that sort of, you got to follow the book, you got to, this is to become successful, it's X, Y, and Z. And that nothing outside of that allows you to become successful. So, in his mind, he's never been creative, or he's never understood that side of things and the opportunities that we have here in Canada. So, I'm extremely blessed to be here, and extremely blessed to have the opportunity to be able to express or be creative or pursue different things. And so I think my dad was always afraid that I would go off the path. And so,
Mm.
maybe go into, getting into, drugs or alcohol, or becoming, something that, maybe going down a deep, dark path, which, I never really did. But so these things were always kind of the outlier. And so for him, it was, I need to make sure my son is going the right way. And so every time I would make music, or every time I would explore doing videos or film, he would always shit on it. He'd be like, "Oh, like, what are you doing? This isn't, look at your cousins, look at XYZ. This isn't, why are you wasting your time?" Et cetera, et cetera. So, and of course, like, I don't blame him, because he's never understood that side of things. But it took a long time. It took about probably at least like 4 or 5 years of me continuously making music and videos, and finding a little bit of success, and showing him, "Hey, look, I like made money off this project. Look at my office. This is from my creative works. Look at." And so every time I kept showing him these wins and saying, "Hey, it's not as bad as you think it is," that's where he started to ease off and say, "Oh, okay, like, my son isn't a complete nutcase." He's okay. And when he felt a little bit of sense of security in that sort of form of, like, he's making some money, or he's still pursuing, he's doing something, that's where he started to ease off. But it took a very long time.
You had to have an undeniable stack of proof to back up your claims.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
And that chip, I would say, is where I think my father built the chip on my shoulder, because it was like, I wanted to prove to him that I could do it, and I had to prove to him that I am doing the right thing. And so the motivation early on was, I got to show him that I can make money off XYZ, and I am fending for myself, and I am doing the right thing. And so the motivation came from my father. And then afterwards, it was replaced by the motivation of, I want to be one of the greatest entertainers and artists in the world. And I want to continue to pursue that dream and goal of mine. And so once it was replaced by that, then it was like, okay, I have every opportunity here, and I have every living, waking moment that I have, that I can continuously pursue that. And I have the opportunity to do that. I'm not going to let myself down, and I'm not going to let my parents down. So,
uh, so I'm thinking in terms of Omid, I'm thinking of two different personas for you. You got the Omid, and then you got the Qashus, the creative, and you got the
yeah,
Omid Qaderi. I got that name right?
you did. Yeah.
So you got those two kind of components. So
Yeah.
what, for better or for worse, what is a lesson through the time where there was the most resistance, where it was the most frustrating, where you could have easily just quit and said, "Yep, I'm just going to be an engineer." What is a lesson that carries over to Qashus the creative? So going from that conservative to that safer path to an unknown, a creative outlet where you feel alignment, but there's more uncertainty. Where's the lesson that you maybe even got from your dad too during that time as well?
What if it can turn out better than you imagine? What if it could turn out better than you imagine? What if your reality could be shifted by you just making that one action? And so that was constantly in the back of my head. What if I'm meant to do this? What if I'm meant to be this rapper and entertainer and sell out tours and be on the biggest stages in the world and make movies and do all these things that we see, you know, these YouTubers and these creatives do on the highest level? What if that could be your reality, but you decide to go into engineering? And so I always kept that in the back of my head. I always kept that in the back of my head of like, if I don't pursue this, I am going to live with that for the rest of my life and think, what if? And I don't want to think, what if? I don't want to think that would, to me, would kill me inside. And so I think that was always in the back of my head of, what if it could turn out better than you imagine?
Totally. At the end
Yeah.
of our days, we're just an accumulation of the regrets we chose to live with.
Yeah. And you know what? And I always tell myself this is like, you know what, if I don't get to a certain level in this industry or in this, I would call game, a game of life for the things that I'm doing, that's okay. Because I'm content with myself that, you know what, I did everything in my power to pursue this. And I won't have any regrets, you know, because I can constantly put myself in the pursuit of it. And that to me, or I guess, you know, they say the journey or whatever, that to me is more important because I'm continuously pursuing it. I'm continuously pursuing the 40-year-old Qashus, you know, I'm pursuing that guy to say, oh, what would 40-year-old Qashus look like? What is that? And that's and what would that sort of reality look like? And that's a constant pursuit. So
Yeah, the difference between the rival and the role model.
yeah, in your words, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. So
That's cool.
but you know what, I'm thankful to my father for being the way he was, because if I didn't have him, you know, that strict or that quote unquote, um you know, in his ways and set in his beliefs, I probably wouldn't have had that hunger and that sort of drive to prove him wrong initially. So it was a sort of a, I need to prove him wrong. And then once I got into the flow of that, I was like, okay, I need to prove it to myself. Now I want to prove it to myself. I need to prove to myself that I am a good rapper. I need to prove to myself that I can make a good song. Need to prove to myself that I can create a video. I need to prove to myself that I can create a commercial. And then so these are, as it sort of evolved, the motivation and the drive and that hunger sort of evolves over time. But if it wasn't for him, I don't know if I would have taken action in those early days as hard as I did. I probably wouldn't have failed as hard as I did, because I would have just accepted it. I would just, oh, you know what? Maybe he's right. Maybe I ain't. Maybe I'm just meant to just do. Maybe I'm just meant to be a doctor, an optometrist, or whatever. Maybe he's right. Maybe this isn't the right path. And then if I would have let that seep in, I probably would have lost that sort of drive or that. And that's where people feel trapped, right? When you're in these positions where you have these inclinations and ideas. I have a lot of actually people. I wouldn't say a lot. I have a few individuals who, you know, will message me online and say, oh man, I love the podcast. I love how it looks. I love what you're doing. I love your music and stuff. How did you do it? Like, I really want to get into this as well. And then I'll tell them, I'll literally give them everything that I've done. Like, this is where I go to record. This is what I do. These are the cameras. These are the things that I use. And then I wish them all the best. And then 6 months later, I'll follow up with them. I say, hey, you know, you talked about doing this 6 months ago. Where are you at with it? And they'll say, oh, you know, man, like I didn't have the time, or oh, I don't, the cameras are too expensive, or the equipment, whatever that was. And it's one of those things that I feel like is an idea that if you just let it eat you alive, that like you said, it comes in and then starts to slowly fade, and you feel trapped because you're not allowing yourself to fail. Like, how hard is it to go to Best Buy right now and grab a microphone? It's not difficult. It's not. And you can start a podcast today. You could start making music and singing and rapping on a microphone today. But you consistently put obstacles in your way to a point where that idea just gets so far-fetched in your mind that you don't pursue it. So anyway.
I think that's fantastic. That was a great tangent, dude. I think one thing that I think is really fun that I've practiced is doing it in the reverse, where actually this podcast would be a good example. I guess the podcast is a couple of good examples because the biggest thing that I'm working on, this is the biggest project that I'm working on currently. So it's on the top of my mind. And with that, it took me 2.5 years to start it, but it took me, but I launched it February 8th. And I'm I'm almost at 50 episodes already for the year.
Amazing.
So what I did was, instead of putting those obstacles in my way, I just kept on revisiting the thought and tried to make all the steps so simple. I felt stupid not going after it. Because I think it's the overthinking, it's the perceived overwhelm that we are fearful of, oh, what if I fail? What if I do this? What if? And then people are not thinking, what if it's awesome? What if you're a badass? What if you actually rock it? So I put just the strategies. Okay, what would it look like? Okay, it would take me about 2 hours for this, and this. Then I just made the process so simple that I just felt silly saying no to myself, because that's what we're really doing. If we're saying no to one thing, or if we're saying yes to one thing, we're saying no to the other thing. So if I'm saying yes to not starting the podcast, that means I'm saying no to having a podcast, to being able to have these cool conversations with folks. And it's like freaky and weird because I don't know, like I love talking. So it's not that much of a change. And I think to myself, okay, well, if I was on a stage and we were just chatting, would I be okay and comfortable with the things that I'm going to say? And I think what this podcast has actually done is taught me the things that I'm the most certain of, where I'm really able to go down trajectories because I can go from that personal experience rather than thinking of, I don't know, just like caring too much about societal things where it's, what's this person going to think of? What are they going to do? What is this? Like stuff like that, where I find looking in the mirror and thinking to yourself, how can I earn my self-respect? How can I earn the respect of the person in the mirror?
Yeah.
And I think that's I think that's kind of a crazy thought on that one.
It's
That was
another
just a
thing
tangent.
too.
I just went out on that one.
No, I love that, man. And going back to what you said is, a lot of us don't respect the things that we tell ourselves. Right? A lot of us don't respect the things that we tell ourselves. We tell ourselves that we're going to get fit, or we tell ourselves we're going to start that podcast. We tell ourselves we're going to make that song, or we tell ourselves that we're going to build that business. And when you disrespect what you say to yourself, that starts to become a domino effect within, and it seeps into the other parts of your life, where you start to say, yeah, I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to wake up at 6 in the morning and go to the gym. And then you hit the snooze button. It's okay. And you say it's okay to a point where you've done nothing. And again, it comes back to your heart. You're not aligned anymore, and you disrespect yourself. And so it's one of those things that I always try to keep in mind is, like, if I say something, that I don't disrespect myself. You don't have to tell it to somebody else. You just have to tell yourself and look yourself in the mirror and say, look, I'm going to do this one way or another, and I'm going to figure it out. And respect what you say, because then the opposite happens, and you start to dominate other parts of your life because you are respecting what you're saying. Don't have the audacity to say it if you're not going to do it, right? So,
Damn, that's a good one too. All right, that was pretty good. I totally agree, because then you have incongruence, right? And confidence comes from competence, and competence comes from your thoughts and your behaviors aligning.
Yep.
And so
exactly.
I love how you said disrespect. What was it you said there? Disrespecting.
Yeah. Don't disrespect the things that you say to yourself. If you have the audacity to say the things that you're going to say, then do them, right? Don't disrespect your word to yourself. Because if you do that, it starts to seep into other parts of your life. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That was a good one. That was a good one.
Yeah.
That was absolutely fantastic. So on that note, we're just going to be tying it up here. And I got 2 questions for you, my friend. Unless
Yes,
there's
sir.
something that you wanted to share that I just didn't touch on or didn't ask about.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay,
No,
cool.
I think we're good. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, dude, you dropped 2 fire knowledge bombs on that one. I am so pumped to clip this up.
Thank you, bro. Thank you, man. Appreciate you.
Beautiful. So, first question. It's the dark one. It gets pretty dark for folks. But you're on your deathbed. It's at the end of your days. None of your content exists. None of your music exists, which is kind of even crazier to think of. The people that you care about and the people that you love are around you. What is a piece of advice that you want to pass on to everyone around you?
If it doesn't exist. So what you're saying is I never pursued anything.
No, like if it just, you're on your deathbed, everything's deleted. All you have is that one, whatever you say on your deathbed is the only piece of advice or the only thing, this is going to be the last thing that you're known for. Or
Damn.
the last piece of advice that you ever gave.
Damn. Okay. I have to go back to it. What if it could turn out better than you imagine? I would have to leave that with the friends and family around my deathbed, because I didn't pursue it in that moment. So what if it can turn out better than you imagine? What if you act on your dreams? What if you act on your ideas? What if you act on the inclinations you have? I think, I don't know who said it, but they said the graveyard is the most valuable place in the world. Because why is that? Because there's people in their graves right now who didn't act on their goals and their ideas, because and those ideas and those inclinations have died with them. Those secrets have died with them. Those things that they've always wanted to do have died with them. And so I think the piece of advice that I would give my friends, family, anyone listening to this is, yeah, what if it could turn out better than you imagine? That little inclination, that thought in the back of your mind that you've had for the last year, act on that.
That is a fantastic piece of advice. That is so good. So now bringing it to a little bit more of an internal realm. Let's say that 40-year-old Qashus is sitting right next to you.
Yeah.
What advice is he going to give you for the season of his life that you're experiencing right now?
Keep going. Keep pushing. Keep doing what you're doing, because those things that I'm doing right now are going to set me up for the 40-year-old Qashus. So don't give up. Don't stop. Do not stop, because it's not going to be like this when you're 40 if you don't continue doing what you're doing.
That is fantastic. All right, folks, that's what I got for you in today's episode. Where can people find you, my friend?
If anyone wants to find me, you can go on all platforms at Qashus, Qashus. If you want to check out my other works, I'm on the Second Floor podcast, 2ND Floor podcast. Find some of our conversations there. I'm also on the radio Friday nights. Every Friday night from 6 to 8, I'm on the radio. So 1440 a.m. on the Universal Radio Network. You can catch me and Kenny, my co-host, on there. And if you want to check out some of my production work, it's Q Films Media, at Q Films with a Z Media. So
that is awesome. Which one's your main one? Where people, Qashus, I suppose, hey?
Qashus is the one, yes. If they want to find me, at Qashus.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And folks, if you love today's episode, please do me a favor right now. Share it on your Instagram stories and tag me with my handle at Warrior Body Kyle, along with at Qashus. That is one of the ways that we grow. And until next time, I hope your day treats you as good as you look.
Like and subscribe. Let's go.
Yeah, like and subscribe.